My name is Jolanda Andrach. I am the Chief Operating Officer of AgriSA. AgriSA is the largest representative body in agriculture.
I'm Herman Groenewald, and I'm the General Manager for John Deere Financial. And John Deere Financial, our pure purpose is to allow our clients, the financial solutions, to buy John Deere equipment on the African continent. So I'm Aubrey Rautenbach. I'm the head of agribusiness for ABSA. We're the biggest financier of agriculture in South Africa, and we've got a history of longer than 100 years, in financing of agriculture.
So I'm Etienne Meyer. I'm the marketing manager at AFCRI Equipment. So AFCRI as such is quite a large player in the agricultural industry, of which one division is equipment. The other divisions are grain, so they do grain storage, handling, and trading. And we've got milling, and we've got animal feeds, farmer development, farmer financing. So it's quite a multi-faceted business focused around the whole value chain of agriculture. My job is obviously to help out with the marketing on all of the places where we operate. So that would be South Africa, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Namibia, and soon to be another couple of countries in Africa. So hopefully that could bring some interesting topics to the forefront.
Yeah, so my name is Vikas Shiprasad, Tactical Marketing Planner for John Deere, looking after Africa and Middle East. So basically the role is to look at solutions and technologies to provide to our customers on the African continent.
All right. Vika, I'm going to start with you, and I want you to tell me, what is precision agriculture?
Okay, so precision agriculture is utilizing technologies such as GPS technologies and sensors on equipment to get data out of your machines to be able to make informed or better decisions on your farming operation. Utilizing GPS technology, you can get specific coordinates, so you know exactly wherever your seeds are planted, you know exactly where you're putting down your chemicals. So when you get that data back from those equipment, it allows you to make better informed decisions, also documenting that information. So when you go 2 or 3 years down the line, you can see exactly how much you've put down, where did you miss, where do you need to improve on, and then improve your farming practices with those simple steps.
Is it difficult to handle and work with the technology? Does it take you a lot of time to train the farmers or the end users of those products? And everybody else can answer that as well.
So it's the same as using a smartphone. If you understand how to use a smartphone, the technology is the same. You just need to understand a specific area in your operation that you want to improve on, and then utilize a specific piece of that technology to fix that. The interface is user-friendly. It's designed similar to a smartphone, so it works on applications and stuff like that. So I would say not at all easy to teach and train on using.
Yeah, so from our side, I think the idea of precision agriculture depends on where you are at. So for some people, precision agriculture will be stepping into the next generation kind of technologies that are available, off the shelves in the US kind of thing. And next we get them in South Africa. That would be the next step. I think if you look at different parts of Africa and we can even talk in terms of Botswana and places like that where you have just the JD Link kind of technology that's in it. It needs no user interaction, but it's actively sending data on what that tractor is doing, how it's operating, what the efficiency is of the operator, etc. So you're already building up this whole base of kind of data that you can use at the end of the day to kind of effect better decision making. So it depends on where you're at and which stage you're at, and that's really interesting for us because it kind of hits right at every level.
Is the growing trend among farmers, is it something that is happening across all markets, this precision agriculture?
I think it is. If we look at the trends in the buying patterns that farmers have, we're talking to precision farming, but if you think around technology, I mean, like Etienne said, you get farmers at various levels of technology use. Be it from the buying your first tractor, that's a small tractor that's got better fuel economy, that's technology, that's in those machines, right up to the precision farming. So it's really, we do see the trend that farmers are buying more for technology. First off, to get that initial saving. I mean, we all have scarce resources. You want to save on those resources. If you don't have to put down all that chemicals, you can use precision farming to do that. So there is definitely a trend, and I think what we see is the farmers that start using that technology to which level it is, they seem to keep on buying more and more technology. So getting a number to what the benefit is, it's difficult because each farming business is different. So for one farmer, it will be this kind of saving and benefit. And for the next one, it's going to be different. So getting numbers to it is quite difficult. But you can definitely see there's a trend that once farmers get into that technology use, they continue to do that.
So it's difficult to say. They've definitely benefited from it, but it's difficult to quantify that exactly. Yeah. Okay. So another thing, what is the difference between commercial farming and emerging farmers? Commercial farmers and emerging farmers. Is it something like SMEs and bigger businesses? Like, is there a split like that in the farming community?
I think the first important thing is to say scale does not warrant profitability or success in agriculture. So when you think of commercial farmers, it's obviously farmers that intend to and go about farming with the intent of making a profit. And then you have subsistence farmers or farmers that engage in agriculture for lifestyle purposes. But when it comes to the question of scale, in the commercial sector, obviously you then find large-scale farmers as well as varying levels of smaller-scale farmers. And from an output perspective, what we do see is a greater level of consolidation. So a smaller number of farmers are producing a larger outset of agricultural production. That does not mean that smaller scale farmers cannot be successful and that does not have a role to play. They play in enormous importantly a role in the South African food system. So from a topology perspective, I think the important differentiator is to say, how does these farms look? So you need to differentiate farms that happens on, or farming that happens in far off rural areas in the restitution in the land reform context, and farmers that farms in a setting which is almost in informal settlements. And then farmers that have a larger piece of land out in the countryside. So how we think of scale comes down to both the commodity that farmers engage in, whether it's agronomy, livestock, or horticulture, and also, where in the country they find themselves. Sometimes you find a small farm in Bloemfontein can be highly successful, but then a large farm in the Karoo might not be profitable. So scale is a very vague indicator of success in agriculture. But the big differentiator is obviously the intent that you go into farming.
Yeah, so I think maybe if I can add the, so if you think about financing, it's usually where a piece of the requirements are not there. So it might be that there's not the title deed to provide security, or it might be that there's not, owner's contribution. So, and that then, forms part of this small scale or emerging agriculture. So we do distinguish between that. And I think that, we sit in this multiple dimensions in South Africa. You've got food security, but you also got the social piece. And I think this emerging farmers is quite important in the social piece. We do see people moving to cities, so how do you keep people in a rural South Africa? How do you keep some development there? So it plays an important role in the bigger picture.
Peace, like vrede.
No, social, like people would like to have, a piece of land,
something. Okay.
and they would like to farm it.
So it's a social piece that belongs to everybody.
Yeah, so the social environment, people aspire to own land and to farm that land. And then, the broader social issues around land in South Africa, which is quite emotive, but it's important that you do not leave these emerging farmers behind. And even if you just go back to food security, it is quite important. And whether it's subsistence, it does fill people or provide food to people.
Yeah.
And it's very important, and that's all part of the social. It's food, the availability, the affordability of food. So it plays an important part.
Important. Are we seeing farmers struggling to get finance? And what are the barriers, and how can we assist them in crossing that bridge, Harman?
I think, again, back to splitting the group to your smaller and new entrants to the market versus your more long-standing commercial kind of farmers. The challenge that we find is the availability of information. The farmers that's been in the business for quite some time has been through the mill. They've paid their school fees in terms of what's needed, what's required. So the availability of information is much easier, and it makes the decision at the end of the day for the credit granting much easier. Again, it's not a guarantee that you are a successful farmer if you're a commercial farmer. There's so many things that can go wrong for various reasons. I mean, we're in agriculture, and it's seasonal. On the smaller scale farmers or the new entrants to the market where they first time financing, there is an education piece that we need to drive. And you'll see we've got efforts going to enlighten the people to say, these are the items we need. Start keeping records of your expenses, your income. Write that down, even if it's as elementary on Excel. You don't need to spend a lot of money on accountants. Obviously, at the end of the day, if we want to get to a stage of being commercial, you'll have to get professional accounting services. But to get started, just to show that you've got a history in farming, you need to keep record of that farming activities. And that's key for us in the new entrance to the market. There's various models that I think government and public sector try out. To various extents, it's got successes, some learnings. But you definitely do see that there are new ways that the larger agricultural environment is looking at ways of financing new entrants to the markets, given the challenge with information that's not available.
Interesting. Etienne and Aubrey, this is for you. Are we seeing some crops getting financed more easily than others? And why would that be?
Yeah, I think technologies in crops, it really depends. But if we take what's available these days to kind of adopt, it depends on the price. So I mean, I'm thinking about a specific technology that we also sell and support, but it's for spraying less chemicals onto tree products, so orchards and stuff like that. And it goes to the tune that you can save about, I think it's 60% of your spray volume. So it's actually quite a no-brainer. However, the challenge becomes that the technology is more expensive than the sprayer you put it on. So you put all of this in a packet and give it to a bank, and they're like, I don't know about that. So it does need some kind of training, convincing as to the benefit of it. Because in the end, if you look at the benefit that you get out of having this technology work for you, it just makes sense. The ticket price, however, that's a different story.
So do you sometimes, on behalf of the farmers, then make contact with
Yes,
the
and
financial
even if you look at technologies like that, you can imagine that there's some people that think, okay, so if you're spraying less, we're going to be selling less herbicide and chemicals to the customer. So automatically some barriers start popping up. I don't want to point fingers, but it's kind of you have to spend that time in education and helping each other out in terms of this whole community that is agriculture. So everybody needs to understand the benefit and how they play a role in it, to kind of get it at the end of the day. And I think and there's a lot to say about all of the pressures. If you're looking at specifically citrus out to the European unions, they're putting a lot of pressure. So, it's not in full effect yet, but it's something that they're looking at. And it's something that we have to change to if we want to access those markets. These types of technologies play a major role in kind of accessing those industries for us. So we need to kind of pick up on that and have that discussion with each other to start looking at ways in implementing technology to help us access markets.
So I think from a bank's perspective, there's a clear difference. If you talk about horticulture and cash crops, the one is a very quick cycle with cash flow, very quick. So if you go to the horticulture and you plant orchards, some of it takes up to 12 years to reach maturity. So you need to store, put fertilizer and the whole programs down for that 12 years where you start only getting small crops from year 8 onwards. So your pockets need to be fairly deep. So there's a clear difference and a risk profile depending on what you are and what you're planting and what commodities. On the cash crops, it's a lot easier, faster, and something like some of the grains, it is from an input cost also, it's a lot cheaper. So the mistake that you can make or when stuff starts going wrong is a lot smaller than on these long-term crops.
But we need all of those products. So it's going to still be manufactured or farmed with. It's not a question of getting rid of those that's not really making financial sense.
It's not. So I do think it's a life cycle. So if I were to become a farmer, I would definitely start with a cash crop and then build up reserves, capacity, and I'm talking about management capacity, because it's a lot less forgiving on a tree crop than a cash crop. So you need to have a bit of experience to go into that.
And you've been with ABSA 20 years now. I think so, yeah. All right, Herman, cash flow management practices. From setting up your annual budget to monthly planning, it is probably tricky for farmers, especially when considering seasonality and market demand changes. How should farmers approach this challenge? And I suppose, Aubrey, you've all got ideas about this. And where do you come in to support them, if at all, Herman?
So I'm a huge advocate for cash flow management. You can do everything right in the business, and if you fail at the cash flow management piece, you're doomed. And there's various reasons. I mean, it's always nice to say we've got a huge turnover, but I mean that doesn't. It's for vanity, that I'd say. Then maybe a bit more realistic is when you get down to the net profit once all the expenses are paid. But the bottom line is really on the cash flow. So even if the financial shows there's a profit, it doesn't mean you have cash in your pocket to pay your expenses. So it's key to manage that in especially agriculture. I think what makes agriculture a bit more challenging is it's seasonal based. So you have to be more pedantic about your cash flow than you would be in a normal business. And many of the farmers I think most of the commercial farmers has paid the school fees in the early days of their business, where they in good seasons didn't put away enough or didn't plan enough for the seasons that's down. And I think that's where the emerging or the new farmers to commercial or entering to the market is still learning to say. But it's tempting to say we had a good crop and I'm going to spend it, but forgetting that there might be off season next season. So that's key for the farmers to manage the cash flow piece to it. You must also have assets that's liquid. So if there is a blip in the business, that you're able to get rid of those assets, sell it off quickly and use that cash flow. So it doesn't help that you sit with a R1 million farm and you haven't got liquidity to pay the R1,000 diesel account that you need to pay at the end of the month. So that's key. I think one of the pieces that I also would advise the clients to is it's not as difficult as you would think. It's in the old days, though, they always said you have to do the math on the back of a cigarette or matchbox to see how you're going to end up. So it's really just that basic sitting down and thinking through the next season and even maybe the season after, to plan, even especially in the good years, to say, well, it's a good year, but let's plan, what if next year is not as good? What do I need to keep back to remain positive on cash flow?
I'm sure that's one of the reasons for an emerging farmer to become a commercial farmer. Yolanda, do you see a lot of that happening? And if not, why not? Is there enough support?
I think maybe we should contextualize just in the context of precision agriculture. In my understanding, it's a set of practices and knowledge and equipment and technology that's integrated across the life cycle of a farm, right? So that looks different on a grain farm, on a horticulture farm, like a permanent crops or fruit farm, and it looks different in livestock where you're working with animals. So from a development perspective, I think what we need to say is not everything comes down to the cost of technology. And not all technology is equipment or infrastructure. A lot of the success that we've seen over the years in agriculture is tacit knowledge networks. And I think from a development perspective, the greatest leaps that we've made on a farm level is the quality of training and the quality of exposure that we give to emerging farmers. Obviously, that needs to be matched with access to finance and over time access to infrastructure and a greater level of sophisticated equipment. But it is having the know-how of how to employ technology in a certain section of the life cycle of a farm. So pre-planting, what does it mean? During planting, what does it mean? During harvesting, what does it mean? And it's integrating that knowledge into how you make decisions on a farm. So in the context of precision agriculture, I think data is a huge enabler of success, and it can certainly contribute to the development of emerging farmers in our country. I think the nice thing about the work that we're currently seeing is data is actually having a network beneficial factor on the economy. So what we mean by that is one farmer is not just benefiting from the data that's being collected on his farm. He's benefiting from all the data that's being across his commodity cycle and across his region. So the rate at which change is happening and the rate at which you can improve your own decision making, especially in the emerging farming context, is quite significant, and it's certainly something that we're excited about.
How do those farmers get that information?
I think in agriculture, we're all aware that organized agriculture is organized along value chains. So for every value chain, there's an industry association. And many of these industry associations have farmer development programs that spans across into the NGO and the DFI networks. And there's also partnerships across the value chains of private entities, both on the equipment side, also on the input side. And it's about scaling those efforts that's already existing out there. I think, again, we need to keep in mind the topology of farmers that you're working with, where they are, what's the commodity cycle, what does it mean from a cash flow perspective. But from a progress perspective, I think agriculture is well organized to actually distribute the knowledge to farmers, and data is certainly something that we'll leverage in the future.
Yeah, apparently there's for every 100 people in South Africa, there are 150 cell phone subscriptions. Can you believe it? We have more subscriptions than people that actually use cell phones. So that's probably also one of the ways to do it. Thanks. That's a fantastic answer.
Sorry, just to add on to that, everything comes back to the technology piece. And like we said, there's different levels and scale to where you are in the technology journey. But I think the key part of that also is start utilizing the technology at a small scale, and then scale, and slowly you start seeing the benefit and scaling up from there. So it could start with maybe a back office program that will help you with your cash flow management, but then from there it integrates into something else that could benefit you on your profitability or reducing your chemical costs and stuff like that. So it's starting that journey, and growing within that journey is what will help you with your cash flow, and also making the right decisions during the season for your production.
Is it something that you have to, as vicar, have to stay up to date with all this new technology that comes around all the time? How do you stay up to date with that?
Yeah, definitely you have to be, and there's different resources, YouTube, the internet. It's
Okay.
Yeah.
not just from inside John Deere itself.
No.
That also to add is quite a thing, because it's like weekly that every there's a new thing coming every week.
Yeah.
No, I think the other thing that I wanted to mention is just like if you look at data and the ownership of data, it's a massively contentious kind of issue. So data is knowledge and it's power. In the wrong hands, it's a bad thing. But at the end of the day, I think if you take an aggregated view at it, it's valuable, really valuable. So in certain areas to use certain best practices, that could definitely help people that are living in an area as to what the best practices are for farming in that area. When to plant, when to spray a certain chemical, based on aggregated data. I think the other thing that would be massively important was if one can start kind of getting a basis where that could be shared, and I think definitely out of all of the industries that are out there and representative of those industries, that would be definitely the mouthpiece for that.
Yeah, exactly.
So at this stage, I think just from our perspective, we have a viewpoint of over, I think, 4,500 machines running around South Africa at this stage. So that gives you quite a bit of coverage as to what happens in certain areas.
There's information together.
Yeah, and I think the other part is you don't have to be an expert of analyzing the data, but like Yolandi said, you got this network of people that can access your data and help you simplify to make the right decisions.
Yeah, and if you look at a combine at this stage, it's got like the new combine's got like 700 odd sensors in it.
Yeah.
That's all data points and collecting data. It's crazy.
Definitely, it's more than weekly, daily.
Yeah, it's by second. So it's quite interesting to see how much data is collected and what we can do with it. That's still an open question, I guess.
Yes. And the young people will be less afraid of accessing all that data, because we just don't want to let this thing explode or something. While the younger people are just easily into it.
I think and that's the thing about agriculture. It's not just a farmer. The kind of job opportunities and everything going open around it is amazing. We see a lot of people from an IT perspective entering the business, doing very good things at this stage in terms of changing industries. There's certain farms we visited there where they've got like radio frequency ID tags on cows.
Sure.
And the cow would go into a certain stall and it would ration out the feed. The milk machine goes on robotically, does the milking process and like tags it to that cow. So this cow gave so many liters of milk today, your ration tomorrow is the next. So it's like, and it's I guess expensive and it's quite interesting, but it's something that one can look at. It's the data that's coming back that's more interesting, because automatically you've got saving on feed, you've got data on this cow, quality in terms of cream content, etc. So it's just like it blows your mind.
And I suppose there's some kind of a balance that has to be found between the use of technology or machinery and labor, because we've got, what's the word, werkloosheid? What is that? We've got unemployment, and we actually need them to work in agriculture. Agriculture has probably got a kind of a solution for unemployment. So there's a balance. Is it something we want to discuss?
I think the important thing is to say the agricultural industry employs about 10% of South Africans. So it's just under about 1 million people that we employ. From a technology versus productivity versus in terms of numbers of employment, I think the important thing is to understand that the role of a farm worker is changing on a farm, but is not necessarily disappearing. So the way we applied fertilizer or nutrients or engaged in irrigation on farms is changing. And so the type of work and the level of technology integration on a task level is changing. So from a macro perspective, we do not necessarily foresee job losses. But what you do foresee is a change in the nature of the work on farms, and farm workers are actively engaging in that. Farm workers or farmers specifically are not leaving farm workers behind in this process. Just as you should think about farmers as generational, farm workers and communities also has that generational element to it. And technology adoption goes hand in hand with that process. So there is a transitioning happening, but I think it's something that we as an industry have been handling quite well, both on a macro as well as on a farm level.
No, I tend to agree. If you just look at the skill levels of the labor that you see, in the past where you had labor that had to drive the tractor steering the wheel, now you have to have skilled labor that understands all the side events that's happening on the screen of the machine and to know what's happening if he gets an error. So a huge upskilling that's also being promoted in the agricultural industry to keep the labor force up to speed with what's happening in technology.
Herman, Hello Tractor in Kenya is an interesting thing. Apparently, it's not that easy to acquire very expensive tractors for commercial farmers and for emerging farmers, as well as equipment, that's expensive. Talk to us about that Hello Tractor thing.
So that's quite a interesting model that Hello Tractor started off, and in essence, it's like Uber for tractors. If I have to call it by any other name, I hope I may use Uber. But what the company did is they saw the need for access to mechanization. We always were thinking, well, you have to own the piece of equipment. They came with the idea, well, you don't necessarily need to own the piece of equipment. You can have use of the equipment, and so it's a service delivery that they came up with. And what they also did, that what's nice is they packaged it in a app format that you can have on your phone. So you know how your season is going, you can go in on the application and you can say, well, I need to do this application on my farm at this date. And then you can look around which service providers or tractor operators you've got in the area, and you can book that service for that specific period. So it's quite nice. You can there's a lot of data, and I think on the owner of the equipment, what makes it also nice, it makes it more easier for the banks to finance them, because they can come to the bank and say, well, here's the agreed contracts that I have, that the work I need to be done, and the company is acting as a secure environment to secure payments between the contractor and the farmer, and also able to support the business case of the contractor to say, well, here are the contracts that they can support the repayment of the unit. So very interesting model they've got there. It's going well, and I must say what they latched onto that is they've got service centers now, and they're starting to do what we saw in the old days in SA, co-ops, where they start providing seed and mechanization services of the units. So they're building a whole ecosystem with that model that they've got there, and it's quite interesting and unique.
Have you been involved with that, or is it just something that's in Kenya?
We are involved with it. On the inception of it, the owner of the company approached us and said, well, I'm looking for an equipment company that's willing to take this journey with us, and also assisting in the financing of these units. There's obviously a financing model behind it, to make it a bit more secure towards the commercial banks as well. So we've been involved. We're keeping a close eye on it, and as we get the opportunity, we do visit the respective centers to see how it's going.
Is it something that could work in South Africa?
Well, I think there are similar models popping up all across Africa. I think there's one in the Eastern Cape, Aubrey, that you maybe can share more about.
Yeah, so I think, just to take one step back, I think if you look at outside of South Africa, agriculture happens on a small scale. So you don't find these huge commercial farmers, or they're limited compared to the bigger market. And once again, I mean, you're not going to buy equipment if you have 2 hectares or 5 hectares, and I think this solves for that problem. And I do think the data is quite important, because it is this change in financing models. How do you use trusted third-party data to enhance a decision or to get it faster? And then we see similar to the question around, could it work in South Africa? I think it could, and we do see some hybrids and pieces of that already being implemented in the Eastern Cape. The Eastern Cape government, realized that there was a community of farmers that would need mechanization, and we tried to structure with John Deere and John Deere Finance, a deal around those mechanization. So it's literally, taking a concept and trying to apply it in a different way and adjusting for that, in South Africa. So I definitely think, platforms and technology and data is the way, and that's the thing that's going to keep you in business. It's very important, and we are working, as APSA, and we are shareholder in a platform that's created this ecosystem. So it provides inputs. So like Herman spoke about the company, e-hailing company, this is the take a lot for inputs. So farmers can buy. If you're a new era farmer, you don't have to buy a truckload full of fertilizer. We've created the distribution points where it gets delivered close to those farmers. We link corporate South Africa that wants to buy or to have preferential procurement. We link that, to that farmer. And then we have a funding platform in the back that organize payments and receipts. Who gets what, when do you get it, just to safeguard it, to make sure that the input suppliers are getting their finance. But there's also two bigger programs that runs on top, and I'm now specifically on the emerging or new entrants, into the market. It's a funding readiness program. We think that everybody knows how to go and apply for a loan, but that's not necessarily the case. So we run a funding readiness program where we try and talk around a credit score. Why is it important? How do you get it better? Why is it important to have record keeping? Plus then all the KYC documents that everybody in the ecosystem needs at some point. How do you gather that, make that available? But then there's also the market readiness piece, because it's all around traceability. If you would like to enter the formal market, the buyer would like to understand how was this crop treated, what was used on it, and record keeping or data becomes so important. So if you've got a platform that can manage that, because at the moment, if you look at the new entrants, we need to have lots of boots on the ground to make sure that there's capacity. And once again, it is about the upskilling and sharing of information, and building up experience, because I think none of us enters with a full set of experience. So this is literally, how do you use that, and stuff like AI, we have not even spoken about that, plays a major role. Today you can take a photograph of a plant, AI can identify what it is, it can identify a disease, and make a suggestion around what you need to spray on that. It can give you, optimal, taking weather, it can give you an optimal planting date to say you need to plant now. It can manage this mechanization in the back end fully. To use people is very expensive. It's that cost to serve, and that's where technology makes it. So I've spoken now a lot about the different technologies.
Very interesting, and it's very exciting to know that that's happening. These things must be heard. Etienne, thoughts?
Yeah, no, it's always interesting in talking on these panels, because you learn a lot about other people are busy with, So no, I also think it's amazing. I think the access that we can give to the farming community and agricultural community as a whole is really important. Use the new technology that's out there. I think definitely the marketplaces are popping up. The use of AI is starting to become a major factor in terms of technology we see out there. And that it's just there to make the job easier. It's not to take over people's jobs necessarily. It's there to be used as a tool to make your job faster and more accurate and easier.
You enjoy working with technology.
Yeah. Actually got a story on that. So a friend of mine, he's a small scale sheep farmer, weekend farmer, and he told me the other day that he's seen this flower growing on his farm that's actually, causing the sheep to get sick. And he did the exact same thing. Took a picture of this plant, put it on AI, and AI actually threw out everything that what this plant is doing, how it's affecting the sheep, what it needs to do to get rid of it and stuff. So yeah, the technology is real, it's out there, and it's available to use.
Absolutely. Are we seeing that agriculture is growing in Africa? And is it sustainable or very seasonal? Agriculture has to grow in Africa. We have to create more food. Surely it's growing.
So I think population is growing, and that means more food. And it's quite interesting if you take a very long view around agriculture. If it weren't for technology, I think starvation would have been a lot more prevalent. And it's a lot of technology. It's biotechnology in terms of seed and drought-resistant seeds, shorter growers. But the world is hungry, and we need to produce food. And Africa is one of the few continents, if not the only, that's got actually still arable land available. So there is some research that says 60% of the arable land available globally is in Africa. It's very specific in specific countries. A country like South Africa, commercially well developed, so not really that opportunity, but I mean, seed and the other technology becomes quite important, to just be productive and stay in the game. But yeah, I think if you look at the global situation, in a short period of time, they will look at Africa to provide food. And even if you just look at a country like Nigeria, the estimates of the World Bank is that they will reach 800 million people, in the next 10, 15 years. And, people need to eat.
How difficult is it to start farming in sub-Saharan Africa for a South African farmer?
Yeah, so I've had some experience, and I worked quite extensively in what we refer to as our Oro countries, the countries outside of South Africa. And I think certain countries, there's a maturity as well, and if you think of Africa, Southern Africa very much like South Africa, then you have Eastern Africa or East Africa. And they do quite a lot of vegetables to Europe, and they do flowers, very fertile soils. And then you have West Africa, that's, they've got cocoa, shea butter, and a whole lot of other things that we as South Africans don't know. Cassavas and yams are things that we're not familiar with. But I think countries understand food security. I think every time something globally happens, we go back. We've seen out of the US now, all countries went back and said, let's just pause and look at our food security. Because if trade patterns are getting disrupted, are we going to have enough food? And it starts at home for South Africa first, or your country of origin. And then the surplus you can export. But I think it's just so important. So I think countries understand that. And there's different programs in different countries. Nigeria have, a number of programs that they would like to assist and help. And even in a country like India, they actually the Reserve Bank plays a major role in making sure that agricultural production happens. If you're a bank and you're not lending to that sector, they actually penalize you. They increase some of your rates that you have to pay them. Yeah. So I think countries understand that it's food security is massive. So they try and create an environment where there could be some investment. And you usually find, where it's the small scale farmers, you'll find that there's a corporate that's an aggregator, and they are 9 times out of 10 a multinational, that actually aggregates and that actually wants that crop, and they make sure that this value chain functions effectively.
Fantastic. Yeah.
I think maybe the important thing then to add is the interdependence on a food security level, especially when you look at the SADC countries, right? Our neighboring countries is reliant on South Africa for food security. About 44% of South African exports goes into Africa. It is our largest market. So we play an enormous role in terms of their regional stability, because food means stability in Africa, and we need to be clear about that. I think what we should be explicit about the level of innovation that we're seeing, or the nature of innovation we're seeing in how we develop. When you think of technology and the coming wave, it's not about innovation just on a farm level. We've heard words now of ecosystem, partnership, anchor investors in certain value chains. So there's a clear indication of the way we're going to grow in the future is on an ecosystem level, where there's strong investors within certain value chain that can stimulate that demand and actually take farmers with them. So everything, innovation-wise, when you look over the next few years in agriculture, it's going to happen on a partnership level. You think about climate adaptation, insurance innovations, finance innovations. Everything happens in collaboration within a corporate setting, partnering up or then down in the value chain. And it's an important thing for us, because it raises the question of how do we do data governance in agriculture. And it's certainly one of the pieces that we need to address, both on a farm level, but also on an industry level, is to say, how will we engage with each other and do business in the future that safeguards everyone's data in a way that it actually democratizes access to information and democratizes access to making better decisions, but also safeguards everyone's competitiveness.
Wow.
Sorry, if I can just add, there's also some competition for agriculture. We've all seen cell-based food, which is not grown on a farm, it's grown in a laboratory. So it is having all these markets and all these competitors and substitution products, in mind. You need to be very mindful around where is the world going into. A cell-based meat, as an example, doesn't have methane gas, which on a green calendar or a green agenda, would have a negative connotation. So there's a lot of development in technology, and food is not only produced nowadays on farms. There is a definite development and use of technology, outside of typical production systems.
It's a bit like those lab-grown diamonds that you can buy now. Yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
Is it a cow that they?
No, it's a cell.
It's a cell.
They take a cell from a cow and then they grow meat out of.
It's just meat.
Yeah.
It's not something that walks around and eats.
No, it's
Meat that you can eat that.
Yeah.
If we won't vouch for how it's
Yeah,
You
so
tasted it? No.
So I mean, they've built in the US. They've built a $200 million factory that's building that, and it's all out of it comes. What's quite interesting, it comes out of the insulin manufacturing. That's the process that they use, to manufacture this meat. There is this little video where a guy stands in front of a screen and says, "I would like to have a ribeye steak with 18% fat," and he presses the button and machine there it is. So a couple of hours later, you can have a braai.
Okay. I think I would like to not be around then anymore. Well, I enjoy my real stuff.
very old thing.
Let's talk about just some success stories again from out of Africa, from above us.
Yeah, I think the one that was directly, we were involved in is it was a government farming program in Botswana called Timo Letlolo. And that gave obviously a financing aid in terms of purchasing mechanization. I think the realization came to the people in Botswana that you can start properly producing food if you've got mechanization on the ground. It makes the job a whole lot easier, especially if you're looking at the grains and maize sectors, sorghum, which they do quite a lot of, that effectively kitted a whole lot of farmers in Botswana with mechanization that they would not have necessarily been able to access on their own. Obviously, very sweet deal for them because government was stepping in, giving a little bit of a commitment as to the financing, and that worked out well. Now they're well suited. Obviously, if everything falls into place, like the rainfall and like everything did this year, where it rained well, it kind of translates into a good story coming out of those regions. Yeah.
We've seen one in Zimbabwe. We were involved in also providing mechanization to farmers, and it's really a collaboration between the manufacturers of the equipment, the government, Minister of Finance, Minister of Agriculture, and then the commercial banks in the respective countries that we see great successes. I think, and we see it even more in Ethiopia. We've got a similar example where there's a private-public organization that buys the equipment and also in that format then enables farmers to obtain equipment. So we see a lot of that developing and that collaboration between government, private sector, and the individual farmers that's quite successful. I don't think we tell the story enough about those successes.
Is John Deere Financial currently only in South Africa, in the rest of Africa?
We also represented in the rest of Africa. Maybe a bit of history on John Deere Financial. In 2005, John Deere Financial landed on the African continent. And at that stage, we entered into an alliance with ABSA on South Africa. And through alliances, we spread to 13 countries that we've got different representation and alliance partners that you deal with in those respective areas. And our approach is two-pronged. We normally look for a commercial bank that's multinational, that serves your more commercial farmer. We found that works quite well. And then we also look for a partner that's more localized bank that's got a better footprint in the rural areas. And we found that they work quite well with the smaller farmer that's into agriculture. And then normally we also look for a leasing company where there's a need for leases on equipment.
This has given me a lot to think about. Now, this is very exciting. It's opened my eyes, this discussion and the previous one, about the absolute successful agriculture we have in this country, the safeguarding mechanisms we have with, for instance, banks, the various organizations that are looking after agriculture. So as a closing statement, how do you feel about the future of agriculture, Yolanda?
I think I'm enormously positive about the future of South Africa and agriculture. Over the past 30 years, we've doubled agricultural output. More than 50% of the produce that we produce in South Africa is exported. We've managed to overcome various difficult cycles, commodity-wise and climate-wise, over the past 30 years. So looking ahead, obviously there's uncertainty on a global market level. There's some changes geopolitically. There's certain preferences in the EU market regarding sustainability that's having an impact locally. We have to diversify into the Eastern markets. There's various high tariff barriers that we need to address. On a domestic front, obviously we're struggling with diseases and some infrastructure issues that spans across the value chain. But broadly, I think we can be confident about agriculture over the short and long term, and in the resilience of South African farmers.
I'm very positive. I am very positive about agriculture in Africa as a whole. I think if we look at the new exciting type of technologies that are coming out, the kind of products that I work with all day, they've got like 3 major focus areas, and that would be autonomy, electrification, and automation. Sorry, yeah. So electrification, autonomy, and automation. So electrification, obviously having sets of products out there that have not necessarily running off batteries, but are some sort of a hybrid system at first, but also can move into proper battery systems or EV systems. I think that's really important in terms of if you look at having power to the ground, having the best efficiency out of products that are coming out, it's the best. If you're looking at autonomy, obviously having machines do something while people sleep or have no operator in it, it's something that is very contentious. It's something that a lot of the world is battling with, but obviously if the world's battling with it and they produce it, soon enough you will see it or start seeing it in Africa in terms of where it gets implemented. Once again, I think it's not there to take people's jobs. I think it's there to be used as a tool. Obviously, having people skilled up, because obviously these types of products need some sort of an intervention. They cannot just live on their own out there. There will be some type of management behind them. And I think that opens up a whole new league of kind of jobs that people in the agricultural sector can settle into. And then the automation, obviously, doing manual things the whole time, which is not needed. You can automate a lot of it. Automation could mean something like machine learning, where they have cameras that spot kind of products and realize that this is a weed and spray just the weed. So, I mean, automatically your savings in terms of what you spray on the chemicals and runoff and environmental aspects is just I don't think you can beat it at that stage.
We haven't spoken about infrastructure at all, but surely that's got to be part of the success of agriculture. Local municipalities, I suppose.
I think that's
I think infrastructure is enormously critical to the functioning of agricultural value chains. On the land side, obviously we're sitting with a set of structural challenges across rural South Africa pertaining to electricity, water infrastructure, as well as roads. I think roads is probably the most immediate crisis that we sit with at the moment. Electricity has recovered over the past few months. On the sea side, I think we've seen some improvement in our ports. Strategically, I think we're comfortable with where Transnet is going. Obviously, we'd like to see further operational improvements, and that would specifically benefit a lot of our exports industries, especially on the fruit side. So we have seen some improvements, but obviously there's structural challenges that's really costing farmers a lot of money.
And I think it's really around this collaboration between public and private. That's the answer. I mean, as APSA, we made a conscious decision to help with problems, not to sit on the side and criticize. And I think we see that in agriculture as well. The producers in the different regions would get out and make sure that some of the infrastructure and essential infrastructure are maintained, to a certain level, or engage with government to try and make plans. So it's really around how do everyone work together.
I was going to say they can just move to the Western Cape.
No.
Victor, how do you feel about the future of South African agriculture?
No, I think I'm excited about it. Etienne covered a lot of the technologies that's coming available, and I think that's where that's going to be the driving force in agriculture. You think about your planting windows are getting smaller, your harvesting windows are getting smaller. There's seasons where you're not going to have enough rain, or you're going to have too much rain. Technology is going to play a big part in how you manage through those, and then your input costs are also getting higher. So how do you manage those input costs throughout your season? And yeah, so there's a lot of nice technologies out there. Some of them are available today, some of them are coming in the future. So it is a good space to be in.
Aubrey?
We're very positive. I mean, you can't be in the business for more than 100 years and still be in it, if you're not positive. And I think, if you just pause for a moment, employment, food security. You know, we've got no choice. We need to make it work. And I think if you look in the southern part, you know, absolutely amazing with environment that's not most probably the most conducive to agriculture and what South Africa maintains from a productivity level. You know, up there with some of the best farmers in the world and being recognized as that. The green shoots out of what we see out of Aro, you know, that's very positive, the stories. So we, to use the right financial, we're very bullish about this industry and yeah, and we believe in it.
Herman.
I'm also extremely excited, and I think it's because of the people in the industry. In Afrikaans, we've got the saying, "A boer maak 'n plan." Directly translated, a farmer makes a plan. And you might think, given the constraints that we have, it's difficult industry to be in. But I've seen that constraints forces innovation. And that's what I like about the industry and the people of the industry. Not only does the farmers innovate continuously to overcome a new challenge, the industry supporting them is also made of that type of people. So they're really looking for solutions, and that's why I like the industry so much. It's really that continuous improvement of doing things better for the greater good of the whole population. So I'm hugely excited about agriculture in SA.